If you are leaving your 9-to-5 job feeling worn down and zapped of energy, you're not alone. The American workforce is experiencing an alarming surge in worker burnout. It's an all too common problem impacting life both in and outside of the office.
I know.
All right, let's bring in Business Correspondent Taylor Young. All right, listen, this is something that unfortunately I think a lot of people can relate to, not just even during the COVID, those couple years where people had the chance to work at home, but this is becoming more common.
Yeah, I mean, workplace burnout crisis has really reached unprecedented levels in 2025, and I unfortunately do not have great news for Charlotte workers. You know, despite being a city that's really recognized for its plethora of high-paying job and growing industries, according to a recent survey, I mean, Queen City workers are some of the most burnt out in the entire country. So not exactly a great title for our city to have. Now, according to that new study out by De Novo, it examined worker burnout across various industries in the U.S. and Canada. It did this by comparing the level of burnout workers are feeling on a scale of 0 to 100. And here's the shocker. It placed Charlotte as the 5th most burnt out city in the U.S. with a burnout index of 77. The only cities more stressed out than Charlotte were those workers in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Sacramento, and Phoenix, coming in at the #1 spot. On the flip side, though, Denver, Tampa, and Nashville ranked as the least burnt out cities. And the study found that Americans were 20% more likely to experience burnout compared to our northern neighbors in Canada. So a lot of people walking around exhausted.
Why the burnout? Why is it so prevalent in Charlotte?
I mean, finding kind of hard data specific that's hyper local to Charlotte is really challenging, right? There's really no research out there, but we can use some context clues, right? So the Queen City's largest employers is the financial system, banks, and we've also become kind of a growing tech hub as well. Those are two industries right now that are experiencing a very high level of layoff anxiety. Of course, if you are fearful of losing your job, that's only going to add to the stress and exhaustion, which really fuels worker burnout. I think too is that those are also two industries that maybe be cutting back on hiring people. So we're talking less workers, kind of maybe doing more work. Also another example of what can lead to burnout. And I also think, the cherry on top is Charlotte is a commuter city. And we saw over the last couple of years, a lot of the major companies in Uptown and really across our region have been forcing people to kind of come back to the office. And according to this study, it found that in-person workers were much more likely to experience worker burnout compared to those who are remote. And if we're not talking specifically to Charlotte and more so broader, I mean, just uncertainty, economic times can lead to stress, higher stress levels at work, and also just the rising cost of pay. People are working, they're putting in the time, they're leaving their work and realizing I still can't afford to live my life the way I want to. So not great, but those are really what I think are kind of attributing to Charlotte being in the top 5 spots.
So what's the fallout from this? What's the impact of these high burnout rates, Taylor?
Yeah, because burnout goes far beyond having a bad day at work, right? It's really all encompassing. It impacts your mood, your sleep, your thought. You can't really think properly. And this is not only miserable for workers, but it costs companies a lot of money. According to the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, this can cost companies millions of dollars a year, upwards of $21,000 per employee, just because of the turnover rate and really lack of productivity. So miserable for the employers, miserable for the employers as well.
All right, is there any good news? Can you give us a fix to the solution?
Yes, and actually I hate to even say this because just last week I was up here talking about how remote workers are more likely to be laid off compared to their in-person workers, but remote workers are just a lot more happier. The study found that 70% of in-person workers say their burnout rate would be much better if they were either had some flexibility or were completely remote. And I think that really stems from the pandemic, when a lot of people were kind of forced to work at home. That was kind of a taste of freedom and work-life balance that they kind of can't unlearn now. So the work-life balance, I think, is kind of the fix here. How companies kind of address that, we're going to have to wait and see. But I don't think that this burnout is really something that we can handle for a long period of time.
I've never been a business owner or CEO or anything like that, but I would hope that if you're a business owner, at least give the employee a chance to prove that maybe the hybrid model can work before you just say, no, we need you in the office. Like, try it. If it doesn't work, fine, then go to the office.
And you can turn to studies that show that productivity does not decline. In most cases, it actually increases. So just something to think about.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.